Welcome to Not Another White Box, the channel that brings you all that's cool, quirky and unusual in the caravan world. My name is Cameron and today I'm bringing you a very unusual video that's unlike anything that I've ever done before. Because this weekend we're somewhere really special. I don't know if you're familiar with the background, but this is the National Motor Museum at Beaulieu. And we have special permission to camp here this weekend as part of the Spring Auto Jumble because we're celebrating 75 years of the Sprite Caravan brand, and together with fellow members of Classic Sprite Caravans on Facebook, I'll pop a link to that in the description below, we're here along with the museum and the Caravan and Motorhome Club collection to celebrate perhaps the most iconic name in caravanning history. So without further ado, let's bring you along and explore some of these wonderful vintage caravans together. Mention Sprite Caravans to anyone of a certain age and the likelihood is that they'll have memories of holidaying in one as a child. The fact remains that Sprite Caravans and their parent group, Caravans International, were the largest caravan manufacturer that the world has ever seen before or since. They were shipped from the factory in Newmarket, Suffolk, all over the world. Sprite Caravans founder, Sam Alper, is hailed as the Henry Ford of the caravan world, producing affordable, lightweight, stylish and modern models that got tens of thousands of people introduced to caravanning. Despite their impact, little has ever been done to celebrate and preserve their legacy, until now. The National Motor Museum at Beaulieu have taken on a true museum-worthy 1971 Sprite 400 for a wonderful new community outreach project. Let's hand over to the museum team to find out more.
This is our gorgeous caravan for the community, our 1971 Sprite 400, and it has been with the museum for a few years, but more specifically in the past year we've gradually been restoring elements of the exterior of the caravan so that we can be proud to go out and about and show the caravan with are members of the community who perhaps wouldn't normally come to the museum or perhaps engage with the museum, but we're going out to meet other people in their environments and work with them in different ways on different projects. So one of the focuses of the Caravan for the Community, aka Chatty_Caravan, is speaking to people and gathering stories about their journeys and memories, holiday experiences, whether in a caravan or a camper van or a motoring holiday, anything that sparks a fun memory, a special memory or a significant memory. Very much not just about the vehicle but also the interior. We've got full of fantastic 1970s objects, many of which are original, and we've been donated some objects as well to add to our lovely caravan, and it just is a way to inspire people from a sensory aspect. So the number of people that have been coming in and feeling the fabrics, the lovely nylon on the sleeping bag and the plastic on the bunk and the smell of the caravan has really brought lots of memories flooding back for people, and then those people have then gone on to talk about their experiences either with a caravan or with road trips with parents, grandparents, funny stories, mostly funny stories. There was one chap who felt slightly traumatised by the bunk because he remembers falling out quite a lot. It's been in the museum since the end of 2024, and it's been gradually restored in the museum as well, and we've had a number of people stop by who've loved obviously visiting to see the cars in the museum, but they've then seen this and it just brings in a different angle of their memories and opportunities to share more stories. And certainly out and about, we'll be taking it out and about in the community over the summer, visiting other community events, Hampshire libraries, and also we're planning some reminiscence sessions and activities with local care homes as well. So it's a win-win for everybody. For us, it means that we get out and about and we get to meet more people, and hopefully it means that other people can open up and share what's meaningful for them, and we hope to add this to an online archive, whether it's stories or photos. It's a project that we really want to develop, and get people involved. So yeah, it's a little pocket of joy, this caravan, for all of us.
I am the senior curator of the Caravan and Motorhome Club collection. So I look after the Caravan and Motorhome Club collection, which is a hosted collection, is not part of the National Motor Museum Trust, but the club decided in 2006, in preparation for the centenary celebrations, to put the collection here at Beaulieu and create a permanent storage for it, and also an area of display in the museum here for club members to come and see and access. A lot of the club members in the 60s and 70s owned Sprite Caravans, so it was a very popular choice, and therefore Sprite features in so many of our collection photographs. And in views of campsite in the 70s and 80s, you can so distinctly see how many Sprite Caravans were present in the campsite, and it's always really nice to show these photos because people immediately recognize them and connect with them and start sharing their stories of their childhood holiday, their parents and their grandparents, who very iconically had all the 70s Malaware curtains or upholstery and cushions, so it's very easily identifiable, and for people it's part of their stories, but for us at the collection it's part of the history of the club and the social history more in general, which is what the National Motor Museum Trust is trying to represent with the project. We thought it was incredibly important to take advantage of this anniversary, and thanks to you, Cameron, to put together this rally with Sprite Caravans. And in a way it worked beautifully because it gave us the opportunity to show the caravan for the first time outside of the museum after it's been restored, and for so many people that might not have come to Beaulieu or to the Outtro Jumbo specifically otherwise, to give them grounds to show their fantastic caravans. And it's amazing to see so many different models from so many different decades displayed here. And we can say that it's been an incredible success. People have been very impressed, both by our project and by all the different restoration projects that have been going on here. A lot of people have commented on the amazing details and the attention to recreate proper time capsules with the different caravans. It's been very wonderful.
The story of Sprite Caravans begins in the late 1940s when brothers Henry and Sam Alper formed Alperson Products and began building touring caravans constructed using war surplus parts. The heavy and boxy Streamlight Rover wasn't successful, and Henry lost interest in the business. But Sam felt that he was onto something and relocated Alperson Products to Newmarket in Suffolk to conduct market research and come up with a winning formula. But this new little caravan needed a catchy name. After much searching, the Alperson Sprite launched 75 years ago this year in 1950. By the end of the decade, the name Sprite was so famous that Alperson Products was renamed Sprite Caravans Limited, and their models were sold in countries such as France, Germany, the Netherlands, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, South Africa, and even New Zealand. A whopping 40% of their production output was sent abroad. They were simple in design and construction, but incredibly functional and easy to tow, with Sprite performing several high-profile PR stunts to prove their products. Their core range throughout the 1960s and 1970s mostly consisted of the 10-foot Sprite 400, 12-foot Alpine, 14-foot Musketeer, and 16-foot Major. We're lucky to have an incredible selection of models at the Classic Sprite Caravans rally, ranging from the late 1950s to the early 1980s. So let's take a closer look at some of the wonderful examples that are on display. I am just absolutely bowled over by the response to this weekend. I was a little bit nervous because we've never done a brand specific caravan meet before, and I was a bit unsure how it would go, and there was a lot of pressure to deliver, and it's just exceeded on all expectations. I'm really quite humbled by it and feeling maybe a little bit emotional that there's been such a positive reaction from both members of the Classic Sprite Caravans Facebook group, but also the general public who've been round in their hundreds, if not thousands today. And I thought at this point in the video, I should probably answer the question, why am I doing this? And what started it all? And what's my journey? And those of you who followed Not Another White Box for a while will know the details, and there is a video covering this in more depth, but very briefly, my grandparents had this very Sprite 400 from 1966, which I'm sat in now, and they had 20 plus years of caravanning all over Europe with it, and they sold it just before I was born, and then decided to purchase a newer caravan because their kids had left home and they were suddenly on their own, and they could afford a really nice, totally opposite end of the spectrum, luxury two-berth. But when I came along and showed an interest in caravanning, my granddad used to dig out his old photos of this caravan back in the day. And as someone growing up in the 90s and early 2000s, the thought of a caravan that was A, this small, B, this colourful, and C, this antiquated, was very much an alien concept to me. The classic caravan scene was not really what it is today back then. It was very much pared back, and the focus was very much on sort of the top end pre-war / immediately post-war stuff, and things from the 60s and 70s were not seen as worth saving. So with that in mind, when I turned 18, I bought my first ever classic caravan, a 1963 Sprite Alpine, and there's a whole other story that I'll get into one day there of how that came to be. But straight away, my parents were horrified at this wreck of a caravan turning up on their driveway, and my granddad was just what he did best. Right, let's go, let's get it sorted. And he couldn't wait to get stuck in, and we did it together over maybe 6 months or so, and this caravan was really bad. It was a total wreck inside, and we rebuilt it using bits of other Sprite caravans just to get it something that I could use, but it had to look like it did back in the day. And there was nothing out there, no information, there was no resource showing me how to restore this caravan, or even pictures of the exact caravan. And I reached out to one of the established classic caravan clubs, which I won't name because I don't want to reignite a 10-year-old beef there. But I got my grandparents to join this club on my behalf when I was maybe about 12, 13 years old, because I was so passionate about vintage caravans. And when I got to 18 and started restoring this Sprite, I got in touch with them and said, you know, what can you tell me about it? And he said, nothing. And they put me in touch with someone who's puts themselves out there as a caravan historian. And again, they weren't massively helpful and just told me to buy a book that they'd written that didn't tell me anything about my caravan. And I soon realised that they didn't actually know any of the technical details that you need when you're restoring one of these caravans. And sadly for me, this is someone that I idolised and someone that I respected and someone that I collected everything that they put out there, decided to react very negatively towards me. Maybe they felt threatened, I don't know. And very soon they started picking on the restoration. I mean, imagine a grown adult picking on an enthusiastic 18-year-old who wanted to follow in their footsteps. But yeah, and then once I finished the caravan, I went to join this club for older caravans, and despite the Sprite qualifying on their quite strict age cut-off, just about, the person in charge told me in no uncertain terms that Sprites were, I quote, cheap tat, and the public would not be interested in seeing them, and I wouldn't be welcome at their display rallies. So I was absolutely just so deflated by these two experiences, and it almost put me at a crossroads where I just wanted to sell the Caravan and move on to something else. But I'm quite stubborn, so I went off and started the Facebook group Classic Sprite Caravans just to see who was out there. And shockingly, hundreds of people flocked to join it. And initially it was a really good mix of people who owned them and people who just remembered them and wanted to reminisce. But as time's gone on, there's been more owners than people who are just joining to reminisce. And we decided to try and start a formal meet for Classic Sprite Caravan owners and enthusiasts. But there was so much interest from these people who had these 60s and 70s caravans that didn't have a club to join and celebrate their love for all things the era, that it led to us forming the Retro Camping Club, which very quickly became the largest club in Europe for vintage caravans, and 60s and 70s was the main focus. So that's kind of that story. And my philosophy after my experience, my horrible experience dealing with supposedly grown adults, was to collect anything and everything to do with Sprite Caravans. Brochures, literature, books, pictures, anything I could get my hands on eBay, various forums and things. I'd go to libraries in the area of Suffolk and Norfolk and piece together the history of the brand. And my philosophy was to share this with people and encourage people to restore them and share my experience, but also accept that this is a continual evolving thing that you can keep learning from and keep developing the story. And the story, as we've uncovered it over the last decade or so, has kept growing. So that's been quite a special thing to be a part of. And let me tell you, to all those people out there who deterred me early on, who were selfishly holding on to information and didn't want to share it and didn't want to, wanted to be the keeper of the cards, you get so much more from giving back and giving forward than you do just being selfish. No one thinks any better of you for doing that. And if karma's real, it paid me back tenfold when the owner of this Sprite 400 joined the Facebook group, and a rather familiar looking Sprite 400 hiding behind a bin with the Leeds City Council logo on, with where I'm from, where my grandparents are from. I thought, I wonder if it's the same one. And lo and behold, my granddad still had the original bill of sale from when they bought it. And sure enough, I sent this to the guy who had it. He'd bought it off his neighbour, who happened to be the man that my granddad sold it to all those years ago. And he very kindly said, you need this caravan back. So that's how, unbeknownst to me, this caravan was still out there. And I got it back and restored it. And the first thing I did, this was during that little break we had between the lockdowns in 2020, was I took it round to see my grandparents, who I'd not seen for a long time because of the lockdown. My granddad was very vulnerable and he'd started to suffer with dementia at this point. And he was looking around the caravan, as he always did, all my vintage caravans, and he was sort of saying, in my old Sprite 400 I fitted this, and in my old Sprite 400 I fitted that. And there was this light bulb moment where he realised it was his caravan. And all the stuff that he'd made for it and all the little accessories and things were still with it. And even though it was unrestored and a little bit messy, we had this wonderful afternoon together where he talked freely and comfortably about his memories of the caravan. My grandma was smiling and, really touched by this reunion, if you like. And sadly, he passed away quite suddenly the following year. and didn't get to see the caravan finished, but there's just been so many things that have made me feel that he's proud that I've done it and got it back in the family. And yeah, so many really weird things, like when we were clearing out his garage that was very much his sanctuary. He was an architect by profession, so he had loads of drawings. Everything he ever did as a project he had drawings and sketches for. And when we were clearing out the garage, he had a whole shelf of notebooks going back 50, 60 years of various little projects and things he'd done. And I pulled one out and they all felt, the shelf like fell down and the books fell on the floor. And this piece of paper fell out of one of them onto the floor of the garage. And when I turned it over, it was his original hand-drawn plan of this caravan, ensuring that it would fit on the driveway past the house extension that he was building. I just thought, that's a really spooky coincidence that of all things that he kept was what fell out onto the floor for my attention. So you know, my heart feels full, and this weekend feels like a full circle moment to be back where it all started, with Classic Sprite Caravans, doing the first ever meet that the Facebook group's ever done, and for it to be this well attended and get this reaction from the public, having been told all those years ago that the public weren't interested in Classic Sprite Caravans, and now having the museum, the National Motor Museum at Beaulieu, preserve their own 1971 Sprite 400. Feels to me that we've finally put them on the map, and they're very much the Ford of the caravan world. Not exquisite, you know, very run-of-the-mill, but everybody had one, and the nostalgia for them is unreal. So yeah, I feel really happy with this weekend, and I just feel quite emotional. Feels like a very full circle moment, and this is for my granddad and all the wonderful friends that I've made over the years through collecting Sprite Caravans. And it's a lesson to everyone to be helpful, to put yourself out there, to do the right thing, to try and help people, to encourage people. You know, I encourage everyone to save these old caravans, and loads of people have come up to me and say, you know, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have bought this, I wouldn't have seen this advert, I wouldn't have restored this, I wouldn't have known how to fix this. And I'm always like, yeah, whatever, you know. But this weekend is the first time that I've kind of taken those compliments on board and thought, you know what, I've actually done all right and done something good here, and long may it continue.
My first Sprite was the 400, the 73
73.
one. However, I reckon it must have been your 400 that I saw, the 64.
The blue one.
The blue one that I saw when I first bought the Crown, when I went to your barn. That was when I knew I wanted one. So yeah, pretty much it stemmed from there, and your inspiration on the Sprite, you know, Facebook page and the club, it all just tunneled, visioned. I just wanted a Sprite. I don't know why. It was the colours, it's the styling, it's everything about them. They just, the design, the interior design is so good, the layouts are so good. They are just so practical. And yeah, it was a love affair from the first minute I saw your blue one in your barn. Pretty much, all them 10 years ago nearly. So, but yeah, the Sprite 400 is so light, and because I've got the Morris Traveller, it's just, you have to have it as light as possible because they are a bit feeble, really. And so yeah, the practical element, having it as the lightest Caravan as possible, is really important. This one was a project and a half. Cameron will, I'm sure he can tell you, but he found this in a hedge 10 years ago. It was a real state. The floor was bad, all of the framing was bad, the windows are bad, the bodywork was bad, there was no skylight. Well, there was nothing good. The A-frame was bad. The hitch was bad. Why did I save it? Because it was a rarity of it. I've only ever seen one other one in the flesh. And I thought, if I restore this one, I've saved one. And it was a find me another moment. It was a light bulb moment. As soon as I've seen pictures of them on the internet with the brochures, I was like, I want one of those. And of course, every 400 I've restored, I've got to earlier. So there was 73, the 65, and now the 60. I finally got to the goal, to the one I wanted. The wraparound windows, they're such a big draw. They're so stylish, quirky. I just had to have it. As soon as you messaged me going, oh, we need to get rid of this, I went, yes, I need it. Regardless of the state it was in, it had to be saved for history, really. It's taken a long time to find the vision. With the other ones, because I had seen others in the Caravan circuit, you can look at the others and go, yeah, I want it to be like that. Or you can look at the brochures because they're in colour. You can go, yeah, I really want one of those. With this, it was complete unknown because it's so rare to find a coloured photo or even a black and white photo, and you don't know what you're getting. It was very difficult to visualise how I wanted it, the colours, where the other ones were easy peasy because you can just look on a rally field and go, well, someone else over there's got one, I'll look at theirs. You just couldn't do this with this, and I think that was half the problem, because it was difficult because it was in such a bad condition, and half of it was me trying to visualise the dream of it. And you have to be passionate to do it, and that was half the problem. I wasn't halfway through. It was just like, I don't know how this is going to end up, whether I'm going to like it or not. Been away in it this weekend. It's I've fallen in love with the thing. It's amazing. But yeah, it's taken a real long time to get to that.
We were looking for a caravan because we're heavily involved with the Triumph World with our car, and we were sick of camping. And there was one weekend where it was lashing with rain, and we literally trying to pack up with two kids, literally slung the wet tent in the boot, and we were like, do you know what, I think it's time we're going to buy a vintage caravan. So yeah, we looked around, but actually just reputation, I think, really. And we thought maybe, the 12-foot Sprite Alpine would be the one for us, which was the first caravan that we bought, and it was in amazing condition, all original. So really it was just cosmetic, new curtains and stuff. But I kind of love the retro vibe, and obviously with having a 1970s car, we kind of wanted to keep it authentic, I suppose. So yeah, we didn't want to mess with the caravan too much. So anything that we did was just cosmetic, to be honest. But that was a great caravan, but we outgrew it. Our young boy Eddie really enjoys the classic cars, so a lot of the events that we do go to, he enjoys kind of the vintage cars, the vintage caravans, and yeah, it's great. They love it. and they have to love it actually, because we're away in the summer for weekend after weekend. But I think just that camping in general, kids love the outdoors, and it's just a lifestyle that they're used to, and yeah, they get that it's vintage. And I think because we're so heavily involved in the cars, especially Eddie, you know, he totally appreciates the classic car vibe, and that obviously we want the car and the caravan to fit together. You know, we've got 1972 Triumph 2000, and this is a 1973, so it, you know, they fit together perfectly. And we only outgrew it really, I think, from the kids sleeping. We had, you know, the arrangement with the bunks across the back of the caravan, and now we've moved to a different layout, and this works for us much better. So Martin had always been, obviously he's had a Triumph Spitfire 1500 since he was 19 years old, and we bought the Triumph 2000 only because the kids came along and we wanted to obviously enjoy that as a family, and then the caravan's just become an extension of the car, and this is my thing. So Martin's got the cars and I've got the caravan. So yeah, I set up my Instagram, Oh So Retro Girl, just to share the love. And it's amazing how many followers you get from out there, and how many people absolutely love classic caravans. And yeah, got over 1,200 followers now.
Sadly, all good things must come to an end, and by Sunday evening it was time to hitch up and head home. We'd had participants who travelled from as far as Scotland, North Wales, and even one couple from the Netherlands. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, it just feel weird now. It's like the end of it, and
It does a little bit, because it's been so nice sharing it. And in fairness, I think for the National Motor Museum and the collection, it's been great to engage with so many people that we would have never been able to reach out if not for the caravan. You know, it's a different audience from the typical motor museum audience. So it opens up a new spectrum of possibility and hopefully of events.
if you've enjoyed today's video, please do give it a like, and if you want to support my channel, feel free to subscribe. It's totally free to do so, and it just helps my channel get seen amongst the YouTube algorithms. There's plenty more content like this in the pipeline, so do stick around if you want to see more. In the meantime, I'd like to say thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again soon.